Hey everybody, it's Jeff Hansen back talking BYU football again. Just posted a video yesterday. It got long. It was 20 plus minutes. I think it was the longest one that's ever been posted on this channel. Went through a lot of different topics. So check that video out if you would like. We go through the transfer portal, wrap up some of the 2024 season, have some takeaways, things like that. There were a couple of questions that came up repeatedly in the comments of that video that I want to address because I thought they were fantastic and they kept coming up over and over and over again. Let's start with the tight ends. So I made mention in that previous video, again, check it out for the full length, all the commentary that's there. But I talked about the tight end usage. A very common narrative throughout BYU fandom is that Aaron Roderick does not know how to use the tight ends. And I have a different take on that. I'm not going to dispute that the tight ends haven't been used. Of course, they haven't been used. But my thought process is that there hasn't been a tight end that has really stepped up and earned the privilege, the right to be a focal point of the offense. And there's a couple of reasons for that. And so that's what somebody asked, a couple of people asked in the comments is why? Is it because A-Rod's not developing talent? Is it because A-Rod can't identify talent? You know, what's going on then? Well, there's a few things at play. So I want to talk through that question. And then I've got a second question that came up talking about transfer portal ratings. Is BYU being punished? There's been this narrative that's come up over the last couple of weeks. So we'll dig into that second. I want to start with the tight ends. Okay. So first thing that we have to do, and we're looking at the tight end spot, we have to have a couple of things that I think everybody will universally agree on. First and foremost, over Aaron Roderick's tenure. So really since 2020, 2021, depending on when you want to say he started calling plays, the official offensive coordinator in 2021, involved with play calling in 2020 during Jeff Grimes' last year. So let's call it 5 years worth of Aaron Roderick. Over that time, BYU's wide receivers, I think that wide receiver room has been as deep or deeper than it's ever been in BYU history. Now, that doesn't mean that BYU hasn't had great receivers. Austin Collie was phenomenal. Cody Hoffman was phenomenal. BYU has maybe had better receivers than they've had at any given point over the last 5 years, with the exception of, Puka Nacua. But I think by and large, everybody would agree that with guys like Chase Roberts and Darius Lassiter and Parker Kingston and Keelan Marion, that's a pretty darn good wide receiver room for BYU this year. You go back a couple of years, you've got Puka, you've got Chase Roberts. That's a pretty good 1-2 tandem that you're going to want to get the ball to. Gunnar Romney was in there. So there's been a lot of really good wide receiver play. So in order to command reps, to command those looks in the passing game, I think the tight ends have had to be very, very good, because every throw, right? Every pass that's going to a tight end is a pass that's not going to a wide receiver. So if that tight end maybe isn't as good as those wide receivers are, do you really want to force feed the ball into a tight end? Now, I'm not one to sit here and say that I'm smart enough to say, well, you don't need tight ends. Of course you do. Of course teams use them. And when you have a good one, it differentiates your offense in a way that makes you so difficult to defend. So BYU would love to have tight ends. And that's the claim that I made, is I think that Aaron Roderick absolutely wants to use tight ends. There just hasn't been a tight end that's really worth commanding and forcing the ball into, because he's that much better than everybody else on the field. So let's go back in time. Has Aaron Roderick not recruited the tight end position well? I think he has. I think he's recruited the tight end position really, really well. There's two different things with recruiting, right? There's the recruiting win, that who did you beat out, right? What kind of player, what kind of schools were competing for the players that you're signing? Are you winning those battles? That's an important battle. That's not the end all be all. Then there's the development battle, and what does that player do on the field? So it's talking specifically about recruiting. Bentley Redden has signed. So these are tight ends that have signed with BYU since the class of 2021. So really Aaron Roderick's first class as the full-time offensive coordinator. Bentley Redden had P5 offers. Noah Moiaki had P5 offers. Jackson Bowers, 4-star, had a ton of offers. Matthew Frederick, he's on a mission. He hasn't enrolled yet. He had some lower-level Mountain West offers. I don't think he had any P5 offers off the top of my head. Reiner Swanson, 4-star, could have gone anywhere. Jet Nelson is on a mission. That's a lowly rated developmental guy that BYU BYU didn't beat out big P4, P5 schools for Jet Nelson. Jackson Doman is just signed in this class. Blake Bryce just signed in this class. Blake Bryce has I think he had 15, 20 offers. He was on our show. Check out that video with him. So is Jackson Doman, for that matter. Both of them gave great interviews on signing day, so get to know them a little bit. And then you have the guys that Matava Taase, Ray Paolo, Tucker Kelleher, Jacob Nye, and now Carson Ryan out of the portal. So really you're talking about that first half. Has BYU recruited the tight end spot well? I think so. Redden, Moiaki, Bowers, Swanson, those were all big-time gets. Now, it hasn't translated. Now we move to that second battle, right? That second part of that recruiting win hasn't panned out on the field, and it just hasn't. Bentley Redden went on a mission, came home. He enrolled as, I think he gray shirt for a year, then enrolled for a year, and then stepped away from football this past season. Not a whole lot that anybody could do about that. Noah Moiaki, he's home from a mission. He joined BYU's roster last year, but he was a freshman right off his mission. You can't really expect a ton there. Jackson Bowers, look, it's a bummer. It didn't pan out. I don't blame development. I don't blame Bowers. I don't blame any coach on this one. Bowers got there. He had offers from everybody, right? He was a 4-star, Alabama, SEC schools all over the place. He got to BYU. There was an injury in his true freshman season. There was another injury in fall camp of this season. 2 different tight end coaches, and Steve Clark and Kevin Gilbride couldn't find ways to get him on the field when he was healthy. It sucks. Yes, I would have loved to see Jackson Bowers in the lineup, but it just didn't pan out. I don't think it's Jackson's fault. I don't think he's not a good player. I hope he has a great career at Oregon State, but I don't blame the coaches. That's 2 different tight end coaches, and contrary to maybe the misconception, offensive coordinators aren't the ones who are out there filling out the depth chart. That's the position coaches. So Steve Clark and Kevin Gilbride, both of them, when Bowers was healthy, maybe it was because of the injury and he was just too far behind, whatever it was, 2 different position coaches could not get Jackson Bowers higher up on the depth chart to have more reps. You look at Reiner Swanson. Look, the guy played a lot as a true freshman. He didn't come in and he wasn't a world beater. He wasn't an All-American as a true freshman, but he was a 17-year-old for most of his time at BYU. He's just barely getting ready to go on his mission at 18 years old. The fact that he was playing and contributing at all is a testament to how good he was. He's very, very good, but that's important context for all of us to remember. He was still just a true freshman. He was a 17, 18-year-old kid, just a kid. Most guys his age are still in high school. Reiner Swanson has a very bright future. We got to see glimpses of it, but look, he needed to develop physically. There was an injury for Reiner that he dealt with early in the season, throughout camp and early in the season, that kind of lingered along. He had to get better as a blocker. He was a good receiver. He had to get better as a blocker. True freshman stuff. I don't really blame anybody for that. So I look at this and I'm looking at the tight ends and I'm not seeing a problem necessarily that I can diagnose and say, this is whose fault it is, and this is what has to change. They've got to have more production. They've got to have more talent, but I don't think that everything is completely broken. It hasn't worked out. And that's not a popular answer. That's not anything that anybody wants to hear. But when I go through and I look, they're recruiting really well. They're beating out big name schools for guys who were highly sought after, and they just haven't had a chance to work with very many of them yet. So we fast forward to 2025. Will that change? I think Carson Ryan is the real deal. I look at what he does, and I'm excited to talk about him because that kind of will jumpstart the next conversation about transfer portal ratings. But I look at Carson Ryan, and I see a guy who's super athletic. He can catch the ball. He's a proven blocker. He's already got the size and all that stuff that you want. I think he's a guy that if he can stay healthy throughout the offseason and be healthy come September, he's a guy that we will start to see, oh, the tight end is being used again. I see a lot of Dallin Holker when I see Carson Ryan. And people will look at Dallin Holker and say, Jeff, well, Dallin Holker was here, but maybe A-Rod didn't recruit him, but he was at BYU and he left because he wasn't getting used. He left because he wasn't getting used as much as he wanted to get used. But I go to back to that 2022 season. He played 3 games. He was tied for second on the team in targets that year. That last game that he played against Oregon, he actually led the team in targets in that game. He had to share the field with Isaac Rex. He had to share the field with Puka Nacua. There was Chris Brooks. There was a lot of really good players that are also playing in the NFL that were on that offense. Jaron Hall was no slouch, right? I mean, there was a lot of really good players, and a lot of distribution, a lot of people that deserved reps. Dallin Holker's reps were increasing. He was tied for second in the offense in targets. He wanted more. That's great. Kudos to him. If he wants more, he went out to Colorado State and he got more. But I don't know that BYU didn't use him appropriately because, I mean, they were targeting him as much as anybody not named Puka. So it's hard for me to say that that was a problem. Again, I'm not going to deny and tell anybody that the tight ends are being used well. I'm not going to tell anybody that everything's okay. Don't worry about tight end land at BYU. I just don't know what's broken. I don't think it's as easy as people want it to be of A-Rod doesn't know how to use them or they're not recruiting. I think they're recruiting well. I think they want to use them. When they've had a guy like Holker, he continued to work his way up into the offense and got more and more reps each game, and then he left. They haven't had a guy like Holker since. I'm hopeful that Carson Ryan can be that guy. Okay, the second question that I was asked a few times in that last video, it's been a conversation point over the last couple of weeks, and it's a good conversation to have. And I need to have an important clarification. I am not a 24/7 sports evaluator. I don't assign ratings. So I'm not speaking for 24/7 sports in any sort of official capacity or anything like that. I'm a team writer. I write for BYU on the BYU 24/7 sports site. So I'm just going to I'm going to share with you what I know about how the ratings process works. And I think I can unequivocally say, there's not some conspiracy to keep BYU players down. That's the most important thing. If you stop the video now, there is no conspiracy to keep BYU players down. It's not some crazy thing to help buoy up the talent ratings, the team talent scores of other schools in the Big Ten and the SEC. That's not the way that it works. It's not there. I can promise you that. So let's go through. So we've looked at some of these players. Let's look at some of these players that BYU has signed and why have their ratings gone down? Guys like Andrew Gentry that were rated in the mid 90s coming out of high school. Tausili Akana, another one, was rated, I think 94, 95 coming out of high school, got an 85 rating out of Texas. So let's talk about ratings. The way that 24/7 sports evaluators do their rating, it's based off of NFL potential, not based off of college production. Okay, that's important, and I think we lose sight of that sometimes. But these ratings are not assigned based on how good an evaluator thinks somebody will be in college. They are based on how many NFL attributes does a player have, and do they think that they will be drafted into the NFL down the road? So if I look at somebody like Andrew Gentry, great example. He was in the class of 2020. He went on a mission, came home, enrolled at Michigan, and worked his way this past season into the starting lineup. He started 2 games, and then he got hurt. That was his 3rd year at Michigan. He has started 2 games and played sparingly and mostly special teams in the additional couple of years. His rating drops to an 86. What does an 86 mean? An 86, according to all the definitions that I've ever seen from 24/7 Sports, is a Power 5 starter, a multi-year Power 5 starter with limited NFL upside, and specifically NFL draft upside. And if we look at this objectively, that's probably fair. Andrew Gentry was part of the class of 2020. Any BYU fan knows we've seen Taysom Hill. Should Taysom have been drafted? Probably. He's proven that over a long NFL career, but age matters, right? Age matters in the NFL draft. So if we look at Andrew Gentry, he's 5 years removed from high school, has 2 career starts, albeit at Michigan, has 2 career starts under his belt. His rating didn't plummet to the point that 24/7 is saying this guy's a scrub. They gave him the highest rating that doesn't include NFL upside in that rating. Multi-year Power 4 starter with limited NFL upside. I think that if I'm an NFL scout and I'm looking at Andrew Gentry right now, he's got the tools, but he hasn't put them together in the 5 years that he's been removed since high school. Us, BYU fans, know that, okay, well, 2 of those 5 years were on a mission. 1 of those years was getting back into shape. He's really only played college football for 2 years, and he's worked his way into a starting lineup. But I don't think you can look at that as an evaluator and take all of that context into consideration. You got to look at it like you're an NFL scout, that you're looking at 100 different guys, 500 different guys that are all similar traits. Age matters, production matters. That's part of it. Tausili Akana, he didn't go on a mission, but he was a highly rated guy based on his developmental traits. It didn't pan out. He hasn't seen the field at Texas. Now, 2 years later, he hasn't gained the weight that people thought that he would coming out of high school. So maybe his NFL side is limited. Okay. So that's all context in how the ratings, I think, are kind of assigned and what the rubric is for those ratings. If we want to have a separate discussion that, each of us individually, if I disagree and I say no, I still believe that Andrew Gentry has a ton of NFL talent. I still believe that Tausili Akana has NFL talent. That's a completely separate discussion from, they're holding BYU back. That's not happening. And here's how I think we can prove that. What I've done, I've taken Michigan, Michigan, and then the 4 schools that remain in the playoff right now. So Michigan, Texas, Ohio State, Penn State, and Notre Dame. And I took all of the transfers that they have committed in their class of 2025, and I just want to run through their rankings really fast. Michigan has 9 transfers. The first 2 are rated 90 and 92. Those are solid 4 stars. After that, the remaining 7, 86, 85, 86, 89, 84, 85, 87. That's pretty similar to the guys that BYU has brought in. Texas has 3 transfers committed in the class of 2025. Their ratings, 86, 88, 82. Ohio State has 4 transfers. Their ratings, 92 and 91, so a couple of 4 stars, 86 and 89. Penn State has 3, 86, 86, 87. Notre Dame has 4, 84, 86, 90, and 89 to BYU 7, where they picked up the walk-on Max Alford at an 83, and everybody else, 86, 86, 85. One guy who has not been rated yet in Anisi Purcell, 86, 87. I just have a hard time looking at these transfer portal rankings and saying this is some big giant conspiracy meant to boost somebody else up and keep BYU down. I don't think that's true. I know that's not true. It's just not. Keanu Tanavasa is another example. People have asked. He was rated an 87 out of high school and an 86 in the transfer portal. Kind of the same story with Andrew Gentry. Age matters in the NFL draft. He came out in the class of 2020. He's 5 years removed from high school. His production has been great, but you don't earn a rating based on your production, right? People have looked at it and said, well, Tanavasa's got 19 career Power 4 starts. How is he not closer to a 4-star? Well, Jake Retzloff has 16 Power 4 starts. Is anybody going to argue that he's got a ton of NFL upside? I don't think so. So you don't earn that rating. You earn that rating. You don't earn that rating based on starts and even production. You earn that rating based on what an evaluator thinks your NFL skills would be. That's what it is. I personally think that Keanu Tanavasa is more of an NFL prospect than the rating of 86 does. I think he's got the skills. I can look at it objectively and understand, yeah, he's old. I get it. Maybe he doesn't get drafted. He's still got 2 more years. Then he would be 7 years removed from high school. Maybe that spooks an NFL team and they don't draft him. That makes sense to me. I disagree, but that makes sense. And I think ultimately, as BYU fans, and we look at these ratings, I think that is probably the place that I would hope everybody can get to, is that I may disagree with what an evaluator sees, but I don't think it's a conspiracy, and I don't think it's meant to keep BYU down. It's not a talking point. I think it's crazy that we're still talking about it. To me, that's the context that is needed. I may disagree with some of the evaluations, but I don't think that anybody's doing this on purpose. Hopefully that answers some questions. We'll have some more content coming up in the next couple of weeks, but those were 2 consistent questions, the tight ends and the transfer portal ratings. Those 2 came up multiple times on that last video that I posted yesterday. I wanted to get to those because I thought they were great questions. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And until next time, folks, go Cougs, give them hell.